Really appreciate you taking time out of your busy day this afternoon to hear from our team and our partners on how best to protect events, especially during this summer season where events are often outdoors, which adds some different challenges to the mix. And obviously, we're all still in mourning from the deadly attack at the Capitol Museum about 2 weeks ago, and then the subsequent attack on the Run for Their Lives event in Boulder, Colorado. And of course, this comes in the background of an attempted arson at Governor Josh Shapiro's house. And as we've talked about, we are in an elevated threat environment. This is to some degree a consequence of a war that's gone on for 20 months and concerns that are out there. Some of the rhetoric has turned to violence. So here we are in June 2025. Many of us are charged with protecting Jewish security events. I know we have some of our security partners from around the country participating today, and we appreciate you for joining us, as well as our local institutions here in New York, Connecticut, greater metro New York area. We've got an agenda today. We're going to talk about some of the specifics of what are best practices when having an event during this summer season. And we're going to give that to you from two different perspectives. One from the CSI perspective, as well as from one of our closest partners, the Community Security Service. So with that, let me turn things over so we can begin our formal agenda for today. And again, thanks so much for joining us. Ethan Ehrlich, who is the Regional Security Director for CSI, spent 21 years in the NYPD, including more than 11 years as a senior member in the Vaunted Emergency Services Unit, ESU. He's responded to emergencies at every scale and has top-level training and experience in numerous specialties, including special weapons tactics, teams tactics, close quarters battle, active shooter response, dignitary protection, site security, surveillance, counter-surveillance, and WMD, suicide bomber detection and prevention. And Ethan has multiple certifications from New York State Department of Criminal Justice and has a background instructing police, security, and providing civilian courses. Prior to joining our team at CSI and at Rockland County, Ethan led his own security consulting and training firm, specializing in private and religious institutions. I think this really just underscores that our team of regional security directors are here to help you for your event planning. And as you know, law enforcement veterans from NYPD, from Westchester County, from Connecticut, from the Shin Bet, from the New York State Police, we're tapping into their expertise to help you and your organizations plan these security operations, whether it's the Israel Day Parade or some other event in your area and for your organization. So with that, let me turn things over to Ethan.
Thanks, Mitch. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Before we get started with our slides, I just want to, again, thank Mitch. Also want to thank my colleagues, the regional security directors with CSI, and our colleagues around the country who do this type of work. We've been working 20-hour days for the last couple of weeks to keep up the good work. Speaking of regional security directors, I want to also mention Rob Allen from St. Louis by name. His guidance on these matters, specifically with event planning and risk analysis, has been extremely helpful for us for the last several years. So we'll start with a couple of negative things before we get into what we can do about it. So we see some common mistakes just about every day when we get phone calls about assisting with planning events. One of the most common mistakes that we see is waiting for the last minute. So typically we'll get a phone call about an event the day of or the day before the event sometimes. And the questions usually go like this: we're having an event on Shabbos. Do we need a security guard? While I understand where the question's coming from, it would be much more helpful to start planning security considerations weeks before an event, not hours before an event. That's really going to be one of the main takeaways, is start planning for security for your event as early as possible. Equating guards with security. So the question that we get, and this kind of ties into the first one, is do we need a guard? Well, what else have you done for security, or what else have you done to prepare for your event to be secure? And that has to do with publicity, it has to do with registration, screening registrants, etc. We have to, even if we do need a guard, we have to set that guard up for success. And we'll get into some details about both of these things as we get into the meat and potatoes. Assuming someone else is taking care of it, again, we see this often. Someone is having an event, let's say in a hotel or an event venue, and they say, well, I assume that the hotel is taking care of security for my event. And often that's not the case. So the best practice would be to figure out when you are contracting with a venue to make sure that you know who's doing what. We're going to talk about a few examples, and the idea with these examples is not to pick apart a potential security failure, but I just like our guests on this webinar to think, what would the cost be to our organization if we were the headline? If we invited someone to speak and the person who we invited to speak was heckled off the stage, or our event, our parade was stopped dead in its tracks, what would the cost be? And of course, worst case scenario, what if the cost was a loss of life? None of our institutions really can afford any of these costs. So it's something to keep in mind when we're making decisions and assessing and managing risks. So in this first example, protesters disrupt Rockland Business Association luncheon featuring Congressman like Lawler. We don't have to get into much more beyond the fact that this event was totally disrupted. Obviously, it's embarrassing for the organization, and it's not how we would want our events to go. The Thanksgiving Day parade was stopped for 2 years in a row in New York City while all the cameras were rolling. The reason I brought this up is the Israel Day parade, you might have noticed, was not stopped dead in its tracks. A lot of people have mentioned to me in the last few weeks that they didn't see a lot of protesters at the parade. And I just want to give a shout out to the hard work of the NYPD and CSI in our partnership with NYPD. The reason why you might not have realized that there were people who were trying to stop that parade is because they were not successful, because we did not allow them to be successful. Salman Rushdie speaking in the Chautauqua Institution in Western New York, 2022. Obviously, any event with Salman Rushdie would be a high-risk type of event. And again, we're not Monday morning quarterbacking the security at the event. We just want to keep in mind, if we're having an event with a high-risk individual or high-profile person, are we doing everything that we need to do to secure the event, to secure that individual, and to secure the guests who are coming to that event? We're going to talk about when we're going to start planning. We're going to talk about assessing risk and our security needs, and then managing our risks and resources. So in the planning stage, we want to consider the security implications from the earliest stages of event planning. Oftentimes we start with picking a venue. We decide what the event is going to be. We start talking about food and menus, things like that. If your synagogue or your institution has a security director or a security committee or a point of contact for security, bring that person into the loop as early as possible. And for that matter, bring your regional security director or security professionals from the Jewish community into the loop as early as possible. Security planning is all about assessing and managing risk. There's no such thing as 100% in our world. We try to assess risk and manage it as best as we can. So what type of event are we planning? The security needs are going to be based on several factors. Is this a controversial topic? Do we have political figures speaking publicly? Is this pro-Israel or associated with the Israeli government? Examples that we've seen lately that have been hot topics: Israel real estate events, Israel bonds events, anything related to the IDF, Zaka, LGBT, Pride Shabbat, Hayas, Refugee Shabbat. And I'm bringing these up because they have already been attacked. Events like this have already had deadly attacks. If you're planning an event like this, there's no question that it is in the high-risk category. And religious services to some degree, depending on where they are. So as we're talking about other factors, the number of attendees, do we have high-profile guests? And you can think of examples. I was looking at the people registered for this webinar. We have people from large and small institutions across the country who are joining us. The examples would be different depending on, obviously, the type of event that you're planning. So in order to manage the risk, first, you want to have an idea how many people are going to show up at your event. When requiring pre-registration, now you'll have a better idea of the number of people and who they are. The more you're able to vet your guests at the event, the better idea you'll have, the better you'll be able to secure the event. I put down include affiliation. What that means is this person affiliated with the synagogue? Do we know where they work? That way we can ask someone at that synagogue, we could send a list and say, hey, we have 40 people at our event from this synagogue. Are all these people active members? And then at the event itself, we want to check IDs to make sure that the people who registered are the people who are showing up. Robust registration process may deter people who are looking for a vulnerable event to disrupt or attack. Photo ID will be required to gain entry. Now, this is a key point, and I realize that it's not possible to do this for every event. The Israel Day Parade is going to be probably in the same place every year, God willing. And some of your events also, you're not going to be able to change the location. However, there are a lot of events where you could actually not disclose the location publicly. You could only share that location with your vetted list of registered guests. That will cut down on the number of people who know exactly where this event is. When we're talking about venue, there are other things to keep in mind. The type of venue, are we talking about an indoor event or an outdoor event? If it's outdoor, is it a tent? Is this something that's a moving, mobile event, or is it static? And for indoor events, a synagogue or JCC, conference room at a hotel, or is it in a private home? If it's in a synagogue or a JCC, are there other events happening at the same time? Are there 500 people who are going to be coming in the building, but only 100 are for your event? Things like that will make it much harder to screen your attendees. So our first point with the venue, remember to secure the perimeter, not just thing. Certainly not an empty building. We're concerned about protecting people. And if people are parking in the parking lot, we need to worry about the parking area, entrance and egress routes, potentially even subway stations. The highest risk is often during transition periods when people are entering or exiting an event. If possible, when you're planning the venue, have a backup venue. If there's an issue with the first place or the location gets leaked, it's a great idea if you have a backup venue, and again, share the location only with your vetted list of guests. So you're planning publicity for your event. Your goal might be to let the whole world know about your event, but the more people who know about your event, your risk could go up. How is this event being publicized? Is it on social media, print media? Are there radio ads for it? Is it on event calendars on your local synagogues and Jewish Federation websites? We mention social media and print media. We know for a fact that when people are looking to disrupt Israel events, they're using Google, they're looking at these sites and these newspapers to find out where Jewish community events or Israel-related events are being held. Again, consider not sharing the location of the event publicly. Share the location with the vetted list of registered guests close to the date, time of the event. We'll get into this a little bit later, but the CSI Intel team can look for online activity related to your event. Security guards are always a hot topic when talking about event planning. We want to set this up for success from the beginning. So when we're assessing risk and we're talking about the venue, how many entrances do we have? What's the size of the perimeter? Are we going to be screening our guests using metal detectors, etc.? Now, my colleague Chuck Berkowitz is going to get more into the day of the event security. So keep in mind, this is for the planning aspect. Sufficient guard staffing for the profile. And this is a question that we get almost daily. How many guards do I need? Can I get away with 1 guard or 2 guards? Well, that depends on the event, depends on how many people are coming, depends on the type of venue, etc. All of these factors should be considered, and we're happy to have those conversations. But usually we need more details besides just saying, yeah, 1 guard, you should be fine. High visibility posts can act as a deterrent, right? Our goal is not to stop an attack, but to not have the attack happen in the first place. So if you have guards posted, or even better, have law enforcement posted in a high visibility manner around your event, maybe someone who was thinking about attacking your event or disrupting it will think twice and go home. When we're talking about guards, we're talking about licensed trained guards with concise post orders, meaning the roles and responsibilities should be clear. And we see this issue time after time where guards aren't exactly sure what they're supposed to be doing, and the people who hired them aren't sure either. So it's one of the things that we try to clear up before the event. Are we going to have staff members or volunteers assisting with screening? It's not sufficient to hand a security guard a list of registrants and say, only let these people in, right? It's not efficient. It's not really their job in their job description. So for that type of screening, and again, Chuck will talk more about this, but you probably need to set up ahead of time to have staff members, volunteers, community members assisting with the screening. And what's the communication plan? If you need radios, you're going to have to start planning for that well in advance of the event. When it comes to security guards, you usually get what you pay for. The $15 an hour guard is probably not the person you should be placing in a critical spot. And potentially that might be a waste of money in the first place. So just like any other industry, professionals expect to be paid like professionals. And again, we've seen time after time, you get what you pay for. Let's talk about some of the resources of the CSI Intel team and ways that we can help assess risk. So I mentioned online activity related to your event. So if we know about an event, we notify our Intel team to create alerts if there's any online activity related to your event. We can also create an event threat assessment to share with private security and with law enforcement. Law enforcement needs to be also brought in as early as possible. A lot of times we get requests, can you help us have law enforcement at our event? If we're talking about a few hours beforehand, that's a heavier lift for law enforcement these days. We want to give them several days or even weeks notice about the event so they can also have proper manpower available if that's appropriate. The threat assessment that we create for your event will look into relevant history for this type of event, this speaker, these guests, etc. Past protests, if there's been violence, if events like this have been canceled, all those things are going to be relevant. And occasionally we know more about this than the people who are planning the event. And I can say for certain in some of the real estate events, some of the organizers were not aware of what they were walking into. So a little bit more detail about CSI's role. So monitoring online activity related to your event, the threat assessment, as I mentioned. And for the regional security directors, such as myself, we liaise daily with local law enforcement, and we'll share details about your event to make sure that they are paying special attention and or posting officers at the event. We'll also help you assess risk, recommend and connect you with other resources, including CSS, Chaverim, Shomrim, etc. In summary, we want to set up your event for success. Every event, and certainly every Jewish event, has some level of risk. We want to help you assess the risk and manage the risk as much as possible. Thanks for your time. And just lastly, we're standing by to help. Please get in touch with us. And if your event is another part of the country and you're not sure who your security director is, you can reach out to us and we will help connect you with that person. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ethan. Phenomenal job. Look, I think, some of the key points that I want to underscore for those who are in the CSI area of responsibility is that on our website, on www.csiny.org, we've set up an event security form where you can let us know that you're having an event. And that way we can be aware of it as soon as possible. And as you heard from Ethan, one of the key things that we're going to be doing that you're not going to be seeing is that we're going to monitor any threats that may be bubbling up online. A group may decide they want to come and protest your event. Well, we need to know about it so that we can monitor that and let you know and make preparations. And simultaneously, we need to let local law enforcement know. And as soon as you know about the event, please go to the CSI website, go to the event planning, tell us about your event so that we can reach out to law enforcement, because the demands on law enforcement right now are overwhelming. And the sooner we can get it to them, the less of it an uncomfortable ask it is for us. And as Ethan said, if you're telling us about an event that's tomorrow, we cannot guarantee law enforcement will be there. We need a couple weeks. I know the event didn't just get planned yesterday, so please let us know. But now let me pivot to CSS, Community Security Service. CSS is really one of our closest partners out there. And if you as an organization haven't tapped into the power of the CSS volunteer cadre, if you as a synagogue want to set up CSS, really, it's an important force multiplier for us. And I can't recommend it any more strongly. And glad to hand things over to Chuck Berkowitz, who is the Vice President of Security for CSS, a U.S. Army veteran, a Ranger from the Ranger Regiment, and retired first grade detective from NYPD. And many of us on the CSI team worked very closely, including myself, with Chuck during his time in the Intelligence Bureau, working on both domestic and foreign terrorism. So, with that, Chuck, over to you.
Thank you, Mitch. And I just want to highlight the amount of pre-preparation that Ethan touched on and the necessity of it, because the day of the event, you should be ready to go. And so all that preparation is really necessary. And, CSS works very closely with CSI, and we work very closely with our volunteers at events that, CSI will do all of that extra work for you and help you plan. So, it's a great partnership. Prior to your event, what's going to happen is that someone's going to potentially be conducting surveillance because they want to know about your event, and there's going to be stuff they need to know that they can't find on Google. So if your event is at your synagogue, that's why someone might be taking photos of your security infrastructure. They might be looking to find out when people are arriving or leaving, but just the building in itself. It's also why the same car might drive by multiple times around the same facility, or just in general, why someone is positioned strategically to observe what's going on. There's different types of information, techniques, intelligence collection they're going to want to know. And this is, of course, to make sure that their attack would be successful. So they're going to be watching, and they could watch from various locations, a coffee shop, they could be in a car down the block. They may try and visit, probe the security at your synagogue. If it's an outdoor event, depending on where it is, there may be security there already. Again, still trying to probe that. And they may even try to gain entrance, may try and dress up as a delivery person or even pray during Shabbat. And the reason I'm mentioning these is because at the day of the event, you would have already connected with CSI. Some of this back work that I'm discussing would have already been taken care of. Attackers are going to conduct surveillance, and they're going to open themselves up to detection. You should be noticing, and this is on the day of your event as well, strange behaviors. And you're going to want to let the police know about this. You're going to want to look for things that are out of place, people, things, open doors, any potential weapons. If you notice something, you're going to want to report it. You're going to want to report to the security on site. You're going to want to report it to, if you're a volunteer, to who's leading your team. How have you coordinated with various security, the police, paid security on site? Now I'm going to really get into the day of the event and how you should be creating security sectors and circles. So the green sector is going to be as far out as you can push your security in a safe manner that makes sense for your event. The yellow is folks who are still observing as people enter. And let me just go back. The green sector is you're pushing out as far as you can during the ingress of your event as people are entering. And then you still have a second circle, second sector, the yellow sector. They're observing people, and this is all being done before they get to the red sector, which would be the entrance of your facility. So another example of this is this diagram here. The folks on the top right part of the screen are the furthest security perimeter. And then you're going to have people a little closer in. And we're really talking about, because prior to your event, you're going to have had certain methods of planning done ahead of time. We're talking about the human element. You're setting a wide perimeter, the furthest circuit. You're constantly patrolling and looking for suspicious items and people, and things can change. You want to make sure that your folks are dynamic. They are doing searches and sweeps of the exterior. And again, as I stated, at the ingress, they're going to be pushed as far out as they can. Then once the event starts, they can come closer to the entrance of the building or where the event is being held. And then as people are leaving for the egress, you want to push your perimeter out as far as you can again. Lastly, for the actual screening aspect of the event, furthest out is going to be your observer, okay? They're going to be the ones that are looking for that suspicious person, that person who it doesn't make sense for them to be standing there potentially taking pictures. You're going to be looking for that object that is out of place. You, prior to your event starting, you're going to want people there, your security team, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, to do a search and sweep. They're going to be looking for suspicious objects and suspicious people. And then your people, as the ingress begins, are going to be watching. They're going to be back to the entrance of the event and looking outward. As people get closer, you're going to have someone who can be assigned as a questioner. Really, they're saying simple power of hello works. Or if someone looks a little confused, they can ask them, how can I help you? You want open-ended questions? What are you here for? You know, that's going to be your questioner, your greeter. They're going to be closer to the entrance. You're going to have someone doing a bag check. You're going to have someone wanting people potentially. And again, all this above, these steps, the observer, the questioner, you know, the bag checker, the wanting, you want that as far away from the entrance of your event that is reasonably possible. You don't want it right at the entrance, and you don't want it inside your event. You're trying to prevent someone who's got bad intentions from getting too close to your event, too close to the entrance of your building. So you want to push everything as far out as you can. And again, this is all being done in a warm and welcoming manner. That's what I have. So thank you for your time. I hope this is helpful. Please reach out to me if you have any questions about this for the day of an event.
Great. Thanks so much, Chuck. Really appreciate it. And Chuck, for those institutions who maybe haven't signed up with CSS, don't have a cadre of trained volunteers, but think that their institution could potentially support that, what's the best way for them to get in touch with CSS to build that out?
So you can go to our website, thecss.org. You can reach out to me directly. And if you're not in my catchment area, I will connect you to one of my colleagues and they will help you get you the appropriate information so you can start working on setting up your own volunteer security team.
Great, great. Thanks so much. And again, we really think having CSS as part of the equation, as another layer, another set of eyes and ears who know what's normal and abnormal at your institution, especially for synagogues, is a great resource to tap. David Pollock, anything you can update us on the NSGP grants? I know things are moving slowly and strangely in Washington.
Slowly is maybe an exaggeration. Strangely, I won't get into that's a political statement. But what do we know? We know that we've heard all kinds of word that any day now there'll be both an announcement of the winners of the NSS applications that were submitted in December and the upcoming NOFO. At this point, we haven't received any reports that the preliminary stages of the release are here, so we don't know what's happening there. It's a wait and see. Our recommendation is to really assume that everything is the same as last year. Get your application together and be prepared to respond if they say that we have a week to do all the remaining steps. There are a few changes and you have to address them. The good news is for next year, the administration included in its budget a request for the same amount for next year as they released for this year. That means, just in terms of when the grant comes out, there will be 40% fewer grants, according to our math here in New York, from NSGP. And for the hate crimes grants, that will also be reduced by 40%. It's a competitive grant and it will be even more competitive. For next year, the House Committee has already said, yes, we'll see your $274.5 million administration, but we want $305 million. On Monday, Senators Schumer and Gillibrand had a press conference and asked for $500 million. So we hope it goes up next year, but there's nothing really new for next year.
All right. Thanks so much, David. I know we have a couple questions here, Chuck, that I want to send your way. One was, are all of the people that Chuck mentioned volunteers? How do the volunteers partner with hired security? Which is a good question.
So we have SOPs and we work very closely. As Mitch mentioned, we're a force enhancement. So prior to the event, we would coordinate with the paid security so that the plan is in place and people would know their roles. The volunteers going to be just eyes and ears. Are they going to be checking the bags? Where will be the paid security? Where will the volunteers be located? And what roles will everyone take? But that's planned beforehand. And then on the day of the event, there will be a meeting before everyone goes to their post to discuss and reiterate everyone's roles.
Great. Yeah. And that's just to reiterate, that's something that gets worked out in the planning stage. And given that the CSS volunteers are really keen to be able to identify what's normal, what's abnormal, they really play that role of kind of like perimeter surveillance, which is so useful, especially when there's another guarding entity involved. This one may be a little bit too much detail to get into on this, Chuck, but it's about liability coverage for the volunteers. Is that something you want to take offline with this individual?
Yeah, I'll answer that offline. I think it's probably too much to discuss right now.
All right. So Bruce, follow up with us on that and we'll connect you with Chuck so he can handle that. You can go into more detail. Question about when you're planning for an event, can we comment on security cost trends that organizers should plan for in advance budgeting, in advance of budgeting, even before the comprehensive security plan is drafted? Obviously, there's inflation, but what are the trends? One thing I'll throw out here is that CSI believes we're going to have some funding to supplement private security for outdoor events in the New York area between from now through Labor Day. So again, if you apply through our event planning on our website, that could be something that we could help you with. But Ethan, do you want to talk a little bit about that when you're working with organizations and they're starting to think about planning? Obviously things are more expensive than they've ever been, but any kind of general guidance you can give people on that?
I knew when I said you get what you pay for, some people were gonna want me to try to pin me down for numbers. And I want to be very careful. Costs for security could differ in other parts of the country, even, how close you are to a city. If guards, let's say retired or off-duty police, have to drive into a city, their costs could be more. Insurance costs should also be considered, right? When you contract with a legitimate security company, they're paying a pretty high insurance cost, especially if it's an armed guard company. So just keep that in mind. To the client cost, I would say somewhere between $50 to $100 an hour is normal. Below 50, I would wonder a little bit because I haven't seen a number below 50 in a long time. And again, if it's a last minute thing or there's something special about it, I wouldn't be surprised if the numbers per guard per hour are approaching $100. Now, other costs to consider, if you're renting walk-through metal detectors, magnetometers, et cetera, now we're talking, adding potentially thousands of dollars to the cost of your event. I hope that that's helpful.
Great. No, thanks. And I think that does put some basic parameters around the pricing that we're seeing in the greater New York area.
Mitch, one other thing is that when you're hiring guards, you have to assume a 4 or 5 hour minimum. When that adds up, Terry and I are just doing an event in Central Park, a Yiddish song. That seems to be as par of as anything. But in this environment, we don't know how much risk there is involved. So everyone going in should be magged, which means you're hiring a whole new security staff on top of existing security.
Right, right. No, it's true because you're not going to get a guard for an hour and a half or 2 hours. They need to work a 4 hour, if not an 8 hour shift. So think about that in your calculations. I do see a question here about summer camp. Obviously, we're on the precipice of summer and, camps with large acreage. This one talking about 250 acres. Look, I think if you are in the greater New York area, if you're anywhere up south of Lake George to Montauk, Stamford, Greenwich, Connecticut area, Fairfield County, reach out to CSI. Our appropriate regional security director can try and hustle and get to your location and walk through it. And we're trying to get active threat training done for all of the staff. for the camps during this window between now and when the campers arrive. And we also have a security platform module that we're using to train camp staff remote called ARIA. And again, if you're a camp, anywhere in our area of responsibility, we can have you and your staff get trained on that. And it's a 15-minute time commitment. You can do it on your phone, which is where we know all of our 15 to 17-year-old, camp counselors are all the time. Let's see, I think one or two more questions. What type of social media monitoring is done by CSI? I'm not going to go into great detail there. All I will say is that we are monitoring both surface and deep and dark web. So, we're in places that, many of you are, but we're also in a lot of places that I hope you're not. And, we have some pretty sophisticated government grade tools that have proven themselves when partnered with talented analysts for really finding threats before they appear at our locations. Is there any community organization that actively informs organizations that they are being targeted for a protest? Well, I mean, that here in New York, that would be CSI. Once you let us know about your event, our team is automatically standard operating procedure. Our intelligence desk is monitoring it. And if we find out before your real estate gala that protesters are going to be in front of the Cipriani building, we're going to let you and NYPD know as soon as we're aware of that. So that's what we're doing for specific events and their protests. So last question here, is the state police an option for security? The state police, we've seen, have allocated additional resources since Boulder, Colorado, since the Capitol Museum attack, to Jewish locations all throughout the state. We're very appreciative of that. And last question, ARIA, ARYA, but that's something that CSI would give you access to. So reach out to your regional security director. So last but not least, we've made this a monthly event, these type of training events. So I can tell you that our next event is on July 1st, and it will be at 3 p.m. And I know, Bill Ganley, you have a question there that's specific. I think probably just reach out to Rusty because he'll have the best answer relative to Washington, D.C. Thank you all for participating today. Ethan, Chuck, David, and all of those behind the scenes, Jamie and Seth. I really appreciate all your efforts. Good to see our friends from around the country here. And we will see you July 1st, 3 p.m. Thanks so much. Take care.